Happy Wednesday. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop with you each and every weekday morning with the Center Square here on YouTube. You can also get the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus. And don't forget, sign up for the newsletter at thecentersquare.com. Several things to tackle today, including discussions about energy. The state of Illinois looking to possibly have more battery storage as the state's coal-fired power plants are set to shutter by 2030 and 2045. So we'll get to that conversation. Also, the Illinois State Board of Education wanting to spend $11+ billion of state taxpayer money for K through 12 schools. But how's the adequacy for reading and math? And what about the Trump administration, the possibility of closing the DOJ, the Department of Education? We'll get to that as well. But I think we got to start with what's up in Washington. Just a review of what's going on in Washington, D.C., because there's no question, of course, federal tax dollars flowing from D.C. to Illinois, which passes that on elsewhere, including in education. But the conflicts between the Trump administration and the Pritzker administration here in Illinois, definitely a storyline that we're going to continue to track. So, again, thanks for being here each and every weekday morning. You can always join the live chat where the conversation is lively. People commenting on my my attire. Some people thought I had a Hugh Hefner smoking jacket on yesterday. No, it was just a pullover. You know, I like these pullovers with the. Got a Paisley shirt on now. But no, people talk definitely a lot more than just about my attire in the live chat. So go join that each and every weekday morning here at 8 o'clock with the Center Square on YouTube. All right, stay tuned. We got a lot to tackle, including what's going on in Washington, D.C. So that's next here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning as we wake you up with Illinois in Focus Daily.
This is literally the end of the republic as we know it. If we don't stand up to Donald Trump in his, decision to essentially break down the government according to what he wants and according to what he believes is in the best interests of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the country. We need
Governor J.B. Pritzker on CNN yesterday, from a X post he shared, talking about the warnings he's putting out concerning Donald Trump. Again, somebody who is duly elected with the majority of voters across the country and also with the Electoral College. But clearly the conflict, just a little over a month of Trump being in office, continues to grow between the likes of Governor J.B. Pritzker here in Illinois and other Democrat governors from across the country. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, waking you up each and every weekday morning here for the live show. Be sure to check that out. Join the live chat at The Center Square on YouTube, but you can get the podcast where you get podcasts. So let's talk what's up in Washington. If you go to the Center Square, you can find all kinds of stories, not just what's going on in Illinois. I want to be sure that people know this. The Center Square is also in Washington, D.C. and states across the country. But let's look at this headline from yesterday. What's up in Washington? You've got Congress, at least the U.S. House, passing a $4.5 trillion budget resolution. And this, obviously, is pretty pricey. You had one Republican not vote for it, and that was Thomas Massie. It's kind of more of an independent libertarian Republican. But let's read this story here from Teresa Bordeaux from the Center Square. President Donald Trump's tax cuts, border, defense, and energy promises are one step closer to enactment after the U.S. House narrowly passed its $4.5 trillion budget resolution Tuesday night, officially kickstarting the budget reconciliation process. Now, this followed Speaker Mike Johnson convincing Republican holdouts to commit a brief cancellation of the votes and then to abruptly recall all House members. And the resolution passed 217 to 215, now heads to the Senate. What's in this thing? All right, it's got a high price tag, steep spending cuts. Some Republicans worried about that. Centrists opposed the possible slashing of Medicaid, and fiscal hardliners revolted against the estimated tens of trillions of dollars that the budget resolution could add to the federal deficit over the next 10 years. Now, besides extending the 2017 Trump tax cuts for at least 10 years at a cost of $4.5 trillion, the resolution authorizes $300 billion increase in defense and border spending to be split amongst the Armed Services, Homeland Security, and Judiciary Committee. Now, the the budget, also the price tag and proposal includes instructing the Ways and Means Committee to raise the debt ceiling by $4 trillion. You've got a lot of debate around that. But some other things that were all part of this obviously are going to be coming out more and more, including the Trump tax cuts, the no tax on tips. Is that in there? Also, a whole host of other policy proposals that Trump campaigned on. So clearly, what's up in Washington, making a big splash there. But something else, too, that is happening in Washington, the Department of Government Efficiency and the continued conflict with the courts and with them finding cuts, and even President Trump looking to withhold federal funds from certain areas, and that includes Illinois. Here is Governor Pritzker from Illinois on X, posting a letter demanding answers, he says, alongside members of the Illinois Federal Congregation from the Trump administration for ignoring court orders to release almost $1.88 billion in federal funding for Illinois. If they can't hold their end of the deal, Illinoisans deserve to know. And if you go through, you can read some of this letter. And it just simply says and spells out a variety of different areas where of which the federal government is apparently freezing funds for Illinois. If you go through, you can identify, the 1.8 plus billion. You were talking programs for a variety of different services. So Pritzker clearly not happy about that. He went on CNN to reiterate some of what he had to say last week at the budget address that he provided to the Illinois General Assembly. Here is Governor Pritzker from
We're
CNN.
talking about the death of a constitutional republic. That's what happened in Germany in 1933, 1934. And we're seeing today that you've got an administration in Washington that's ignoring court orders, literally ignoring when a judge says you can't do this. They're going ahead and doing it anyway. The question is, where does that stop? The courts don't have the ability to enforce their orders, and the president is supposed to obey them, but is not. So this is just one piece of a very long story that's developed over the last 6 weeks of the ignorance of constitutional norms and indeed disobeying the Constitution, announcing that we're going to do away with birthright citizenship. That's been established. Well, it's in the Constitution, for goodness sakes. So I really think people need to wake up to what's happening in Washington.
So, again, you've got Pritzker saying that Trump is possibly going to bring about the death of the constitutional republic. He went on to talk about what's next if people don't stand up.
The question is, will people wake up? Will people show up to protest, to make sure that their representatives understand that they can't go along with this? This is literally the end of the republic as we know it. If we don't stand up to Donald Trump in his, decision to essentially break down the government according to what he wants and according to what he believes is in the best interests of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the country. We need people to get out there and have their views known. And that's really what I was talking about when I spoke up at my State of the State speech.
So again, the governor essentially encouraging people to take to the streets. Is that what I'm hearing? That's how I'm interpreting that. But back to the letter that the governor sent to the Trump administration. This is from a news release. Today, the governor, Senator Durbin, Senator Duckworth, various members of the Illinois congressional delegation issued a joint letter to the White House. The letter demands action and accountability from the Office of Management and Budget on the approximately $1.88 billion in funding that's being withheld from taxpayers despite numerous court orders. Now, the letter, he says, provides an update that as of mid-February, most agencies and organizations in Illinois have reported an inability to access funds, with some in danger of needing to pause operations, cancel projects, or lay off staff. Impacted grant programs and organizations include 9 state agencies, boards, and commissions for $692 million, 10 state agency boards and commissions for a total of $1.19 billion in federal funds, 14 state agencies, boards, and commissions have a total of $1.88 billion in impacted federal funds, including the Illinois Department of Agriculture, Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, Community College Board, Emergency Management Agency, Environmental Protection Agency, the Finance Authority, the Department of Human Rights, Department of Natural Resources, Illinois Power Agency, Illinois Department of Transportation, Illinois State Board of Education, which we will touch on in a separate segment. They are asking for more money and also saying they're not going to comply with Governor Pritzker's with President Donald Trump's DEI executive orders, but also other state agencies, Commerce Commission, Department of Labor, and Department of Healthcare and Family Services. So there you go. That's a little bit more detail on all of the different agencies in Illinois that Pritzker says were being impacted by President Donald Trump in his actions to withhold federal funds or to find efficiencies, right? I mean, because it's not just about trying to, have, the president's executive orders be complied by states, but also to find waste, fraud, and abuse. Now, the White House has been getting question after question after question about the Department of Government Efficiency, who the administrator is, Elon Musk, what's his role. Is he really getting things done with the team he's brought in to Doge? The White House press secretary talking yesterday about how confident President Trump is in Elon Musk.
President sent out a truth last weekend to Elon Musk saying he loves everything Elon is doing and he wants him to be even more aggressive because Doge thus far has proven incredibly successful in making our government more efficient. And so Elon and Doge came up with this idea. Elon has implemented this at his private companies. It has proven successful. And it's a very simple idea when you think about it.
Just have people tell us what they're doing. 5 bullet points. What did you do this past week? I work in the private sector for a nonprofit, and our evaluations, they essentially are just like that. List the 5 top things that you feel you rocked. List the 5 top things you think you can improve upon. That's self-evaluation, right? So it's interesting to see just how people are really pushing back against that idea. But regardless, that's what's up in Washington. So we'll continue to cover how what's going on in Washington, D.C. is impacting a state like Illinois. And we'll do it with you each and every weekday morning here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and get the podcast where you get podcasts. If you're not already signed up for the newsletter, go get that newsletter at thecentersquare.com.
state of Illinois and our public school systems? Flat, up, down? Where are we from?
Sorry. We're going down. We've been, but not significantly. We're about 1.9 million school children this year.
Okay. And relative on a percentage basis over, say, 5 years ago, just roughly?
It's down from about 2.1, I think,
Okay.
to. The Illinois State Board of Education recommends a general funds investment of $11.4 billion.
That's just some of the hearing yesterday in an Illinois House committee with the Illinois State Board of Education saying that, yeah, we're seeing a decline in student population, but then they went and asked for more funding. Welcome back. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop with you each and every weekday morning. We go live to tape, by the way. The live show, a lot of people in the chat room chatting it up. I encourage you to join that. 8 o'clock Central Time. It's when we go live. But then we segment out these segments so that you can just go quickly and find your interest point and watch that. So you can get the podcast where you get podcasts, get the segments, and the live show at The Center Square on YouTube, and the newsletter and headlines at thecentersquare.com. So we're in budget season at the State House, right? As a State House reporter, I'm associate editor for Illinois for the Center Square. Got all the feeds coming in, and sometimes it's like sitting in front of a fire hydrant with your mouth wide open, and they just go full blast. But listen, I mean, I'm passionate about this, and I want you guys to stay as informed as possible with what's going on with state government. So it's budget season, which means hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of dense material, conversations, questions, and answers about how your tax dollars are going to be spent in these various agencies. So earlier you heard Marty McLaughlin, a state representative Republican from Barrington Hills, talking with the state school superintendent Tony Sanders from the Illinois State Board of Education about student enrollment in Illinois. And is it up, down? Is it flat?
In the state of Illinois and our public school systems? Flat, up, down? Where are we from?
Sorry. We're going down. We've been, but not significantly. We're about 1.9 million school children.
So it's going down, he says. But despite going down, Sanders and the State Board of Education, they decided to request more funding for Illinois schools.
The Illinois State Board of Education recommends a general funds investment of $11.4 billion in fiscal year 2026. That's an increase of roughly $497 million over fiscal year 2025, with the majority of this requested increase going to evidence-based funding. As Dr. Isoye said, we are very conscious of the state's tight fiscal environment, and we have prioritized the most crucial funding streams and those investments that we believe have the most direct impact on student success. ISB's efforts remain guided by our strategic plan, which the board adopted in January of 2024. ISB's proposed budget focuses on investment that align with 3 overarching goals in our strategic plan. 1, to ensure that each student increase in their knowledge, skills, and opportunities each year. 2, to equip all schools with the necessary resources to provide safe, healthy, and welcoming learning environments. And 3, to prepare, support, and celebrate our educators.
So again, they're asking for $11.2 billion. It's nearly $500 million more than the previous fiscal year. But let's look again at the official statistics here on student enrollment. 2018, just over 2 million. For 2024, it's at 1.8 million. So we're having a decline in student enrollment across the state, but they're asking for increased funding. So if you look at the district snapshot for all these different schools and how much it costs per student, you can really, I guess, judge for yourself how things are going. So if you look at the state snapshot, you can see that all these different metrics, 866 school districts, almost 3,900 schools, 88% graduation rates, but English as language arts and math, you've got some issues when it comes to adequacy, and you can break all that down. But what about students, cost per student, the cost per taxpayer? It's somewhere, I've seen it as low as $6,000 in some rural districts, but all the way up to like $130,000 per student. And in particular in Chicago, you've got an area where there's one school. This is the snapshot for Chicago. You can see Average costs, looks like a good chunk of them right in the median, just under $20,000 or so. But it goes all the way up to, holy cow, that skyrockets, $130,000 per student for Camelot Safe Academy School. There's 44 students enrolled there, and it costs $130,000 per student. Simpson Academy High School for young women, $100,000 per student with 32 people enrolled. Douglas Academy High School, $93,000 per student with 33 enrolled. So you could see you've got some would argue empty schools that have large amounts of overhead. So how does ISB handle that? Not too sure. But the question was asked to the State Board of Education yesterday during that House committee at the State House. What's going to happen with the U.S. Department of Education if it were to close under the Trump administration? And in particular, what's going to happen with funds for special education?
We are monitoring, obviously, the Project 2025 recommendation of creating block grants for all these different funding streams and trying to make sure that at the state level, if that were to happen, how do we protect and ensure that we are ensuring that those dollars actually follow the students as intended. And we know as a block grant, depending on how it's structured, it could just come as a lump sum to the state with no parameters. We want to make sure that we continue to have those dollars serve students. That said, if there was a funding shortfall or a reduction in funding from the federal government, our budget does not predict for that. But we don't have any way of making up for that loss.
So clearly they aren't necessarily ready for what may happen if the Trump administration moves forward with the plan to close the Department of Education and just transfer funds directly to states, as the president had said in the past. So we'll hear more about those plans. State Representative Blaine Wilhauer asked about adequacy. And here's just an overview of academic progress from the Illinois Report Card. You've got, SAT scores, 31%, English language arts adequate, 26% for math adequacy. You've got science assessments, 53% proficient. But when it comes to math, it's 28%, 39% for English language arts. You've got 29% eighth grade passing Algebra 1. But yet, look at that, ninth grade, 88% are on track to graduate with an 88% graduation rate. Some people scratching their heads, how do you not pass Algebra 1 but still graduate? How do you have 39% English language arts proficiency but still have an 88% graduation rate? So Representative Wilhauer yesterday asking Tony Sanders about those adequacy rates and how they're really nothing to brag about.
Well, I can tell you that the highest in the nation is Massachusetts, and they're at 37% on math and 40% on reading. That doesn't seem so. Illinois would obviously have to be lower than that. Does that seem like something that we should be bragging about? Because I've heard the governor brag about it, and obviously that was mentioned earlier in this dialogue. Do you think that those scores are acceptable?
I will always say that we have opportunities to continue to grow in public education. We certainly want to see the numbers increase.
All right, so see those numbers increase. Again, Tony Sanders being asked about the adequacy rates, which we just reviewed. What about the Trump administration's executive orders? He says ends the unconstitutional and demeaning diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, DEI. Because, listen, the state's school budget that's being proposed, $11.2 billion, you've got things like affinity groups that are funded in the budget. What's an affinity group? It puts minority teachers into a cohort and has them have, I guess, fellowship within that, and they can, discuss and commiserate and do all kinds of things. But some people see affinity groups as segregation, right? Trump, he has said that DEI policies are anti-merit based, are based off of skin color and wrong. And instead, we need to be focused on excellence, to focus on outcomes and merit based type things instead of lumping people into categories based off their physical characteristics. So he signed an order that says he's ending the diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. Well, with a note that goes out to various U.S. government agencies, but also all these states, saying, hey, DEI is over, and if you don't comply, you could lose federal funding. Has the Illinois State Board of Education received that letter? A question Blaine Wilhauer asked.
Have you received the letter from the Department of Education, about possible withholding of funding based off of operating on these DEI measures?
Yes, we received the Dear Colleague letter. I wrote a note to the field about it actually just last week. The letter that came to us does not have the force of law, and it's very specific within that letter that it says it does not have the force of law. And so I've encouraged districts to continue forward with teaching the way they've always taught and doing work the way they've always been doing it.
So they're not complying. Even though Sanders says doesn't have the force of law, he still mentions that this is all tied up in courts. But again, $11.2 billion in state funds that they're wanting to spend on education. Nearly $500 million more than the year before. The federal funds that are passed through to the state could be in jeopardy if the courts work all this out and goes through and the Trump administration goes to withhold funds. How much could that be? What kind of impact would that be on the state of Illinois if they continue to go through with more affinity groups and DEI policies in contrast and in conflict with the Trump administration?
So statewide, as you know, statewide funding is about 10% for school districts across the board is federal funding. Right now, ISB's received $2.25 billion in federal awards. $2.03 billion of that is allocated for grants to districts and other entities. $219.7 million has been used at the state for state level purposes, primarily for state level programs, but also for administrative costs and staff salaries. So that would be the impact. Gotcha. It would be $2.25 billion.
And you had previously stated to a previous speaker that losing that money would be a big deal for our operations in this state.
Yeah, we don't have a way to make up for if that were to be the case, we don't have a way to make up for that loss of funds.
Do you think it's wise to be in defiance of that with those kind of dollars attached to it?
I think that there's already litigation pending about this topic, and again, the Dear Colleague letter that came out says very, very clearly that it does not have the force of law, that it was a Dear Colleague letter only.
Well, we'll see what happens as this plays out. So the Illinois State Board of Education requesting more money than before, saying they're not complying with the Trump administration's DEI abolition. What that could mean for the budget moving forward, I guess we shall see. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell as we wake you up each and every weekday morning here with thecentersquare.com.
You know, I live in a black and white world, and so you've got to have answers, and those answers got to be something that you can look at and you can evaluate, not just have these theories or these ideas.
It's State Representative Dave Severin reacting to a proposal from some Democrats to have more battery storage across the state to store solar and wind power as the state prepares to enter a new era, forcing the closure of coal-fired power plants by 2030 and 2045. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Final segment of the live show. If you don't watch the live show each and every weekday morning, you can get that in its entirety at the Center Square on YouTube, but you can also get segments here with the Center Square as well. But get the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus Daily. All right, so yesterday, a bunch of activity, right? And again, today at the Illinois State House, a bunch of activity. So we're going to have tons to talk about even tomorrow. So be sure to put it on your calendar to wake up with us to keep updated with what's going on in Illinois at the State House. But a news conference that happened was with Illinois State Senator Bill Cunningham, Illinois State Representatives Marcus Evans Jr. and Barbara Hernandez, and several alternative energy advocacy groups and contractors. And what exactly were they talking about? Here is State Senator Bill Cunningham laying out what he says is the dire need for more battery power.
The reason we're doing this is because Illinois is at risk of experiencing power shortages, and we're also facing skyrocketing energy costs in the very near future. Illinois energy demands will outpace our supply as early as 2030. Battery storage is needed to reduce that probability and the expense.
So what exactly are they looking to do? They're looking to pass legislation that would allow for 15 gigawatt battery storage facilities across the state to store solar and wind power, so that when it's not sunny out and the wind's not blowing, they can store the power and make up for all of the demand we're going to have on our energy grid from, electric vehicles, AI, quantum computing, data storage facilities. So there's clearly going to be an increased need. And he says, we're going to have this increased need by the end of the decade, 2030. Well, I asked him, to the issue of legislation that the governor signed several years ago that closes most coal-fired power plants by 2030 and all coal-fired power plants by 2045. Was that premature? Cunningham said no, because a lot of those plants are already going to close. But now we've got the Trump administration with his focus on natural gas, drill baby drill, trying to focus on clean coal. I talked with State Representative Dave Severin, a Republican, to get his reaction to the idea of legislating more battery-powered storage for wind and solar across the state.
Solar is, of course, being promoted all over, and wind, of course. But here's the thing, the battery storage. So there is definitely a lack of battery storage in the state of Illinois and the United States. So it is an important factor that we have more battery storage. But here's what I want to give you. As far as that report that they gave this morning, that they want to go ahead and push getting rid of coal. Well, let me tell you, right now in the MISO grid, coal is producing 23% of the power today of the energy. Natural gas is 18%, nuclear is 9%, solar is 10%, and wind is 4%. So wind and solar are an important part of the mix, but if you get rid of coal today and carbon, you get rid of that footprint today, you just turned your lights off. You just turned your power off. You turned your heat off. So this is so premature. And the other thing is, coal has never been cleaner than it is today. And I've been down in coal mines. My best friend was superintendent of a coal mine, and they've never been cleaner, safer. And so now is not the time to get rid of it. It's part of the mix. And if we think it's not, our head's in the sand.
So I was flashing some of the latest. Of course, Severin was looking at the chart yesterday. Well, I'm looking at it live right now, and actually coal is at 32.6% of our energy for the MISO market, and that's just part of the state. It's not the entirety of the state. You've got natural gas at 22.6%, nuclear at 13.1%. Wind actually looks like must have been a windy day in some areas, 20.2%, and then solar at 6%, with other 1.5, not sure what that would be, and imports of 4.1. So clearly coal and natural gas are the two major elements in our energy grid. Are we going to just litter the landscape with more windmills and more solar panels? Some people apparently want that, but is that only if there are subsidies involved, right? because we see this a lot. New alternative energy programs require a lot of subsidies. With the group Advanced Energy United, Samarth Medikar, he answered my question about what kind of subsidies would be in Cunningham's bill to bring about 15 gigawatt battery storage facilities across the state. How many taxpayer dollars or ratepayer dollars in subsidies are going to have to go to operate all of this and to construct all of this?
Solar is, of course, being promoted all.
All right, hold on a second. Let me line that up. Go.
I think it's unclear. It depends on certain factors. So that's at this point unclear unless
But there
other
would be
folks have.
some level of subsidy.
There's continue or as they projected will be much more significant in cost.
So I also asked Cunningham, Senator Cunningham from Chicago, Democrat, what about the subsidies for this? They really couldn't give me a solid answer as to what kinds of subsidies would be involved with this type of program.
We subsidize and have in Illinois for years the development of solar and wind generation, with upfront costs that are charged to ratepayers. So there's a small upfront cost, but that has a price suppression effect in the long range.
So again, no definitive answer, just a, quote, small upfront cost. Severin tackling that issue about subsidies and more on this idea of alternative energy.
All these different things that are these initiatives that are being pushed, it's with subsidies. The subsidies go away, then where are we at? And the other thing is, what are we doing with solar? With amazing farmland, we're losing that to solar. So there's some things, actually Senator Bryant, when she went overseas last year and looked at some things where they actually have the solar panels up in the air so they can still have grow some things under those solar panels. So there's a lot of different things going on, but now is not the time to get rid of coal. That's not the time. And so we're still working to keep that initiative going.
And to the issue of not knowing the dollar amount for how much subsidies would be required to bring about 15 gigawatt battery storage facilities, Severin says that doesn't cut it.
You know, I live in a black and white world, and so you've got to have answers, and those answers got to be something that you can look at and you can evaluate, not just have these theories or these ideas.
We'll be watching that issue closely, of course, on the ground at the Illinois State House each and every day that they're in session. I'm Greg Bishop with the team from the Center Square, watching what's going on so that we can bring you Illinois in Focus each and every weekday morning. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell with the Center Square on YouTube. Get the newsletter each and every morning in your inbox with the headlines. Go to thecentersquare.com and get the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus Daily. That's all I got for you today. We got a ton happening today. So tomorrow morning, you're going to want to tune in, right? First off, today we got another Illinois House Gun Violence Prevention Committee.
I live in a black and white world.
All right, hit that button there. My elbow hit a button there. Sorry. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, we got a Illinois House Gun Violence Prevention Committee that's going to meet today. You've also got an immigration group that's set to criticize Governor Pritzker's budget for not having subsidies for non-citizen health care. But I'm going to have to ask them how much tax dollars this immigration group is getting from state taxpayers. So those are just a few of the stories. Obviously, there's going to be even more news conferences, more committee hearings. We're in that season of the Illinois legislature where they're throwing all kinds of bills at the wall, see which ones stick while they craft a budget in the background, only to reveal that budget late May, where we're going to be in the Capitol in the basement at 2 or 3 in the morning watching all that happen. So I do this so you don't have to. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Thank you so much for hanging out and for the support. The live chat's always lively, so be sure to wake up with us and join that as well. Have a great Wednesday. We'll see you back here tomorrow with Illinois in Focus Daily.